The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room Claire Hoffman had ever seen. It stretched upward for what seemed like miles, with seats carved into the walls in rising circles. Each seat held a representative from a different world. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some looked like nothing Claire could describe with human words. All of them were watching her. Claire stood in the center of the floor, feeling very small. She was 42 years old, a former Navy pilot, and now Earth's first ambassador to the stars. 6 months ago, she had been flying training missions over the Pacific Ocean. Now she was standing before creatures from across the galaxy, waiting to be judged. Beside her stood Daniel Price, her assistant and friend. He was younger than her by 10 years, with kind eyes and a nervous habit of fixing his tie. He had fixed it 11 times since they entered the chamber. "You're going to be fine," he whispered. "I know," Claire whispered back. She did not feel fine. High Arbiter Mox sat on the highest platform. He was a Valori, a species that looked something like a very large octopus made of stone. His 3 eyes blinked one at a time as he studied the humans below. "We welcome the representatives of Earth," Mox announced. His voice was deep and echoed through the chamber. "You come seeking membership in our council. You come seeking trade, protection, and friendship. These things are possible. But first, you must be evaluated." Claire nodded. She had been told about this part. Every new species had to pass a test before joining the galactic community. A telepath would read their mind and confirm they meant no harm. It was simple. It was painless. It had been done thousands of times before. "Counselor Vethran will perform the reading," Mox continued. A figure stepped forward from the crowd. Vethran was a Cinderi, a species known throughout the galaxy for their mental abilities. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. His eyes were silver, without pupils, and they reflected Claire's face back at her like mirrors. "Do not be afraid," Vethran said. His voice was soft, almost musical. "I will touch your temple. I will see your surface thoughts, your emotions, your intentions. Nothing more. It will last only a moment." Claire took a deep breath. "I understand. I'm ready." Vethran moved closer. He smelled like rain, Claire noticed. Like a storm that was just about to break. "Your species is new to us," Vethran said. "We know very little about human minds. This reading will help us understand you better." "Happy to help," Claire said. She tried to smile. Vethran raised his hand. His fingers were long and delicate, like those of a pianist. Slowly, gently, he reached toward Claire's face. Daniel watched from a few feet away. He had stopped fixing his tie. His hands were clenched at his sides. Vethran's fingertips touched Claire's temple. For 1 second, nothing happened. Claire felt a slight pressure, like someone pressing a cool cloth against her skin. She wondered if this was what the reading felt like. She wondered if it was already over. Then Vethran's eyes went wide. The silver surfaces of his eyes seemed to crack, like ice breaking on a frozen lake. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His hand began to shake against Claire's skin. Claire didn't move. She didn't know what to do. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Vethran screamed. The sound was horrible. It was not a human scream. It was higher, sharper, like metal being torn apart. It filled the entire chamber and bounced off the walls. Representatives covered their ears. Some of them fled their seats. Vethran fell backward. His body hit the floor hard, and he began to shake. His arms and legs moved without control, like a puppet with cut strings. Silver liquid leaked from his eyes, his nose, his ears. "Medical team." Someone shouted. Drones flew down from the ceiling. They surrounded Vethran and began scanning his body. More Cinderi rushed forward. their faces filled with fear and confusion. Claire stood frozen in place. She looked at her hands. She looked at Daniel. "I didn't do anything," she said. "I just stood there. I didn't do anything." Guards appeared from nowhere. They surrounded Claire with weapons drawn. The weapons hummed with energy, ready to fire. "Do not move, human," one of the guards commanded. Daniel stepped forward. "Wait, she didn't attack him. Humans don't have telepathic abilities. We can't hurt someone with our minds. It's impossible. Silence." The guard pointed his weapon at Daniel. "You will both be detained until we understand what happened." On the floor, Vethran had stopped shaking. The medical drones had stabilized him, but his eyes were still wide open, staring at nothing. His lips were moving, forming words that no one could hear. High Arbiter Mox descended from his platform. He moved slowly, his stone-like body grinding against the floor. When he reached Vethran, he bent down close. "Counselor," Mox said gently, "can you hear me? What happened?" Vethran's head turned. He looked at Mox, then past him at Claire. His expression was something between terror and wonder. "The noise," Vethran whispered. "So much noise. What noise?" Mox asked. "What did you see?" Vethran raised one shaking hand and pointed at Claire. "Her mind," he said. "It never stops. It never goes quiet. There are voices inside her. So many voices. All of them talking at once. All of them feeling at once. Joy and pain. Hope and fear. Love and hate. Everything. All together. All the time." The chamber had gone completely silent. Every representative was listening. "It was like standing in the middle of a storm," Vethran continued. "A storm made of thoughts. A storm made of feelings. I could not find the center. I could not find the peace. There is no peace inside her. There is only the storm. Always the storm." He closed his eyes. How did they live like that? He asked no one. How did they survive? Claire felt tears on her cheeks. She didn't know why she was crying. She hadn't done anything wrong. She had just stood there and let him touch her mind. But somehow, just by being human, she had broken something. Mox stood up slowly. He turned to face Claire. His three eyes studied her with new interest, new caution. "Take them to holding quarters," he ordered. "Comfortable quarters. They are not prisoners yet. But they are not guests either. Not until we understand what we are dealing with." The guards moved forward and escorted Claire and Daniel out of the chamber. As they walked, Claire looked back over her shoulder. Vethran was being carried away on a medical platform. His eyes were closed, but his lips were still moving. She wondered what he was saying. She wondered what he had seen inside her head. And for the first time in her life, Claire wondered what it meant to be human. The holding quarters were nicer than Claire had expected. There was a soft bed, a window that showed the stars, and a small table with 2 chairs. Food had been brought to her, strange fruits and meats from worlds she would never see. She had not eaten any of it. Daniel sat across from her at the table. He had been allowed to stay with her, which was something. At least she was not alone. "It's been 2 days, Daniel said. "They have to tell us something soon." Claire stared out the window. What if they don't? What if they just keep us here forever? They won't. There are rules. Galactic law. They can't just hold us without cause. "I think I gave them cause," Claire said quietly. "I hurt that telepath. I didn't mean to, but I did." Daniel leaned forward. "You didn't do anything wrong. You just stood there. Whatever happened, it wasn't your fault." Claire wanted to believe him, but she kept seeing Vethran's face in her mind. The way his eyes had cracked. The way he had screamed. She had never heard anything like that scream. She hoped she would never hear it again. A chime sounded at the door. Claire stood up quickly. Daniel moved to stand beside her. The door slid open. High Arbiter Mox entered first, his stone body grinding against the floor. Behind him came Vethran, walking slowly, supported by another Sindari. This new Sindari was female, with darker gray skin and eyes that glowed faintly purple. "Ambassador Hoffman," Mox said, "thank you for your patience." Claire almost laughed. Patience, as if she had any choice. "This is Counselor Myra Toll," Mox continued, gesturing to the female Sindari. "She's one of our foremost experts on telepathic phenomena. She has been studying what happened to Counselor Vethran." Myra bowed her head slightly. "I have many questions for you, Ambassador. I hope you will answer them honestly." "I'll answer anything," Claire said. "I want to understand what happened just as much as you do." Vethran was helped to one of the chairs. He looked tired, worn, like a man who had not slept in days. But his silver eyes were clear now, and they watched Claire with intense focus. "First," Myra said, "I must explain something. The Sindari have been performing mental readings for over 3,000 years. We have touched the minds of warriors, scientists, leaders, and criminals from hundreds of different species. In all that time, we have never encountered anything like what Counselor Vethran experienced." Claire felt her stomach tighten. What did he experience? Myra glanced at Vethran. He nodded slowly, giving her permission to continue. "Most minds are quiet," Myra said. "Not silent, but ordered. There is one voice, one stream of thought, one emotional state at a time. When a Zalari feels anger, they feel only anger. When a Thelian feels joy, they feel only joy. The mind moves from one state to the next in a clear, logical pattern. This is how consciousness works. This is how it has always worked for every species we have ever encountered." She paused. Her purple eyes studied Claire's face. "But your mind is not like that," Myra continued. "When Vethran touched you, he found something completely different. Your mind contains multiple voices, multiple streams of thought running at the same time. And your emotional state is not singular. You feel many things at once. Conflicting things. Contradictory things." Claire shook her head. That's just how humans think. Everyone has an inner voice. Everyone has complicated feelings." "No," Vethran said. His voice was rough, tired. "They do not. I have touched 10,000 minds, Ambassador. None of them were like yours. None of them contained what you contain." Daniel stepped forward. "What exactly are you saying? That humans are broken somehow?" Myra raised a hand. "Not broken. Different. Profoundly, fundamentally different." She moved closer to Claire, studying her like a scientist studying a new specimen. "Tell me, Ambassador, when you make a decision, what happens inside your mind?" Claire thought about it. I consider the options. I think about what could go wrong. I argue with myself about what's best." "You argue with yourself," Myra repeated. "And who are you arguing with?" "Myself. Another part of myself. I don't know how to explain it." "You have multiple voices inside you," Myra said. "Multiple versions of yourself. And they disagree. They fight. They debate." "I guess so. Doesn't everyone?" "No," Myra said firmly. "Other species have one voice. One self. When they make a decision, they simply decide. There is no argument. There is no debate. There is only action." Claire felt dizzy. She had never thought about this before. She had always assumed that everyone's mind worked the same way, that everyone had doubts, that everyone questioned themselves, that everyone heard their own voice talking back to them. "And the emotions," Vethran added. "When I touched your mind, you were feeling fear. That was expected. But you were also feeling hope. and curiosity, and pride, and love for your home world, and worry about your family, and determination to succeed. All at the same time. All mixed together. All fighting for attention. He shook his head slowly. I could not separate them. I could not find a single clear emotional thread. It was like trying to drink from a waterfall. There was too much. Too fast. Too powerful. Claire sat down heavily. Her legs felt weak. Is that why you screamed? Because of my emotions? Vethran was quiet for a moment. I screamed because I have never felt anything like that before. For one moment, I experienced what it is like to be human. And it was overwhelming. Beautiful and terrible at the same time. Chaotic and wonderful. He leaned forward. How do you bear it, Ambassador? How do you live with so much inside you? Claire didn't know how to answer. She had never thought of her mind as unusual. She had never thought of her feelings as overwhelming. This was just how she was. This was just how all humans were. We just do, she said finally. We don't know any other way. Mox had been silent through all of this. Now he spoke. This creates a significant problem. Our verification process requires telepathic reading. Without it, we cannot confirm that a species poses no threat. And we cannot read humans without damaging our telepaths. Daniel's face went pale. So what does that mean for us? For Earth? Mox's 3 eyes blinked slowly. It means the Council must decide what to do with a species we cannot verify. Some will say you should be welcomed. Others will say you should be quarantined, isolated, perhaps permanently. Claire stood up. But we haven't done anything wrong. We came here in peace. Intent is not the issue, Mox said. The issue is trust. How can we trust what we cannot understand? He turned and moved toward the door. The Council will convene tomorrow. You will be allowed to speak in your defense. I suggest you prepare your words carefully, Ambassador. The fate of your entire species may depend on them. The door closed behind him. Claire stood in the middle of the room, her heart pounding, her mind racing with 1,000 different thoughts and feelings. Just like always. Just like every human who had ever lived. Claire did not sleep that night. She lay in the soft bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what she would say to the Council. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Vethran falling. She heard his scream echoing in her ears. Daniel had tried to help her prepare a speech. They had written and rewritten it 12 times. But nothing felt right. How could she explain humanity to creatures who had never felt conflicting emotions? How could she defend a species whose very thoughts were considered chaotic? When the morning came, she put on her formal uniform. It was dark blue, with gold buttons and the Earth flag on her shoulder. She looked at herself in the mirror. She looked tired. She looked scared, but she also looked determined. That was something. Guards escorted them back to the Great Hall. It was even more crowded than before. Word had spread about the human who had broken a telepath with her thoughts. Representatives from worlds Claire had never heard of had come to witness the proceedings. She walked to the center of the floor. Daniel stood beside her. Mox sat on his high platform. And all around them, thousands of alien eyes watched and waited. The Council recognizes Ambassador Claire Hoffman of Earth, Mox announced. You may speak in defense of your species. Claire took a deep breath. She had prepared words. She had memorized arguments. But standing there, in that moment, she decided to throw them all away. She decided to tell the truth. I'm scared, she said. The chamber went silent. This was not how diplomatic speeches were supposed to begin. I've been scared since I arrived here, Claire continued. Scared of failing. Scared of saying the wrong thing. Scared that I would somehow ruin humanity's chance to join the galactic community. She paused. And I'm also excited. I'm excited to be here, to see all of you, to learn about worlds I never knew existed. I'm honored that Earth chose me for this mission. I'm proud of what our species has accomplished. She looked around the chamber. Right now, in this moment, I am feeling all of these things at once. Fear and excitement, pride and doubt, hope and worry. They're all there, mixed together, fighting for space in my head. A murmur ran through the crowd. Claire raised her voice. I know that seems strange to you. Counselor Myriddle told me that your species feel one emotion at a time. One clear, simple feeling. I understand why our minds seem chaotic in comparison. She stepped forward, and several representatives in the front rows leaned back. But I want you to understand what that chaos means. What it actually does for us. Representative Core, the Thelian who had demanded her quarantine, rose from his seat. We already understand what it means. It means your minds are disordered, primitive, dangerous. No, Claire said firmly. It means our minds are never certain. Core made a sound that might have been a laugh. And that is supposed to reassure us? Yes, Claire said, because certainty is dangerous. She turned slowly, addressing the entire chamber. Think about it. If you feel only anger, with no other emotion to balance it, what stops you from acting on that anger? If you are completely certain that you are right, what stops you from destroying anyone who disagrees? The chamber was quiet now. Claire continued. Humans are never completely certain. We can't be. We have too many voices in our heads, too many feelings in our hearts. When I feel angry, there's another part of me that feels empathy for the person I'm angry at. When I'm afraid, there's another part of me figuring out how to be brave. When I want to hurt someone, there's a voice reminding me why I shouldn't. She touched her chest. We call it conscience. We call it doubt. We call it second-guessing ourselves. And yes, sometimes it feels like chaos. Sometimes we wish we could just feel one thing and be certain about it. Her voice grew stronger. But that chaos is what makes us human. It's what makes us question ourselves. It's what makes us grow and change and learn. It's what stops us from becoming monsters. Myriddle stood up from her seat. You are saying that your internal conflict is a form of self-control? Yes, Claire said. When a human considers doing something harmful, we don't just feel the desire to do it. We also feel the guilt of what it would mean. We feel the fear of consequences. We feel the love for the people it would hurt. All at the same time. Before we even act, she looked directly at Core. You asked how you can trust a species you cannot read. But the truth is, you don't need to read us. We already read ourselves, constantly, every moment of every day. We judge ourselves more harshly than any telepath ever could. Daniel stepped forward to stand beside her. Humanity has been at war with itself since the beginning of our history, he said. We've made terrible mistakes. We've hurt each other in awful ways. But we've also stopped ourselves. We've changed. We've built laws and societies that try to prevent the worst of what we can do. Claire nodded. Other species might feel pure aggression and act on it. We feel aggression and guilt and fear and empathy all at once. And most of the time, the better parts of us win. She looked up at Mox. You want to know if humanity is dangerous? Of course we are. Every species that can think is dangerous. But we are also the only species that constantly argues with itself about whether it should be dangerous. We are our own check and balance. The chamber erupted into noise. Representatives were talking to each other, debating, arguing. Some looked angry. Some looked thoughtful. Some looked at Claire with something that might have been respect. Mox raised a limb for silence. It took several minutes for the chamber to quiet. You speak well, Ambassador, Mox said. But words are easy. How can we be sure that what you say is true? Claire felt her heart sink. After everything she had said, it still wasn't enough. They still didn't trust her. Then a voice spoke from the crowd. "I can tell you." Everyone turned. Vethran was standing, supported by Myra Hall, but standing on his own feet. His silver eyes were fixed on Claire. "I touched her mind," Vethran said. "I felt what she feels. And I can tell you that she speaks the truth." He walked slowly toward the center of the floor. Every step seemed to cost him effort. But he kept walking until he stood beside Claire. "Her mind was chaos," Vethran said. "But it was not evil chaos. It was not destructive chaos. It was," he searched for the right word, "living chaos. The chaos of growth. The chaos of a storm that brings rain to dry fields." He turned to face the council. "I have read the minds of 10,000 beings, and I have never felt anything as alive as her mind, as aware, as constantly questioning and doubting and hoping and fearing." He looked at Claire. "Humans do not need us to verify them. They verify themselves every moment of every day. They are their own telepaths, their own judges, their own jury." The chamber fell silent. Mox's 3 eyes blinked slowly. "This is most unusual testimony." "Yes," Vethran said. "Humans are most unusual, but that does not make them dangerous. It makes them—" He paused. "Remarkable." Claire felt tears in her eyes. She had not expected anyone to defend her. She had not expected anyone to understand. But Vethran understood. He had been inside her mind, and he had seen what she was, and somehow he had decided that it was worth defending. The council did not vote that day. Mox declared a recess, saying that the representatives needed time to consider what they had heard. Claire was returned to her quarters, but the guards outside her door were reduced from 6 to 2. She took that as a good sign. Days passed. Daniel brought her news when he could. The galactic networks were filled with stories about the human whose mind had broken a telepath. Some of the stories were kind. Some were not. Claire tried not to read them. On the 5th day, Myratil came to visit. She came alone, without guards or other officials. She sat down across from Claire at the small table and studied her with those strange purple eyes. "I have been thinking about you," Myratil said. Claire smiled tiredly. "I imagine a lot of people have been thinking about me lately." "Yes, but I have been thinking about what your existence means. For us, for our understanding of consciousness itself." Claire leaned back in her chair. "And what have you concluded?" Myratil was quiet for a moment. "For 3,000 years, we Sindari have believed that we understood the mind. We believed that consciousness was meant to be singular. One voice, one self, one stream of thought and feeling. This was the natural order. This was how evolved beings were supposed to think." She folded her long fingers together. "But now I wonder if we were wrong. If we have been wrong all along." Claire frowned. "What do you mean?" "Your species evolved on a harsh world," Myratil said. "We have studied your history. Your planet is filled with predators, natural disasters, climate changes. Your early ancestors lived short, dangerous lives. They had to make quick decisions with limited information. They had to adapt constantly to survive." She leaned forward. "Perhaps that is why your minds developed the way they did. Perhaps you needed multiple voices inside you. One to spot danger, one to find food, one to protect your children, one to build relationships with others. Multiple systems running at the same time, arguing with each other, because your survival depended on considering every possibility at once." Claire thought about this. It made a strange kind of sense. "You think our minds are messy because our world was messy?" I think your minds are complex because your world demanded complexity, Myrathel said. And I think that complexity, which we first saw as chaos, might actually be a form of strength. There was a knock at the door. Daniel entered, his face flushed with excitement. They're calling another session, he said. The council is ready to vote. Claire's heart began to pound. This was it. The moment that would decide everything. She stood up and straightened her uniform. Myrathel stood as well. Whatever happens, Myrathel said, I want you to know that I am glad we met. Your species has given me much to think about. You have challenged everything I believed I understood. Claire nodded. Thank you. For listening. For trying to understand. They walked together to the great hall. The chamber was fuller than ever. Representatives had come from distant sectors of the galaxy, some traveling for days just to witness this moment. The human question, as it had become known, was the most significant debate the council had faced in centuries. Claire took her place in the center of the floor. Daniel stood beside her, as always. She was grateful for his presence. She was grateful that she did not have to face this alone. MoXX called the chamber to order. We have heard testimony from the human ambassador. We have heard testimony from Councillor Vethran, who touched our mind. We have debated and discussed for many days. Now we must decide. He paused. The question before us is simple. Should humanity be allowed to join the Galactic Council? Or should they be quarantined, isolated from the rest of civilized space? Representative Core stood immediately. I wish to speak. Mox nodded. The Council recognizes Representative Core of the Thelian Empire. Core walked to the edge of his platform and looked down at Claire. His face showed open contempt. We have heard many pretty words from the human ambassador, Core said. She speaks of conscience, of self-doubt, of internal conflict that prevents wrongdoing. But words are just words. Where's the proof? He gestured broadly. Let us consider the facts. Humans evolved on a violent world. Their history is filled with war, conquest, and destruction. They have weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. They have come close to using those weapons more than once. He turned to face the other representatives. This is not a species that has learned to control its aggression. This is a species that has barely survived its aggression. And now we are being asked to welcome them into our community, to give them access to our technology, our trade routes, our secrets. His voice rose. The human mind is chaotic. The human broke one of our telepaths simply by being read. What happens when they break something else? A trade agreement? A peace treaty? Our entire alliance? He pointed at Claire. I say we quarantine them. Not as punishment, but as protection. Let them prove they can be trusted. Let them demonstrate, over centuries if necessary, that their chaos can be controlled. Only then should we consider allowing them to join us. Murmurs of agreement rippled through parts of the chamber. Claire felt her hope beginning to fade. Then another voice spoke. I also wish to speak. It was Vethran. He stood slowly, and the chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what he had experienced. Everyone wanted to hear what he would say. I have listened to Representative Core, Vethran said, and I understand his concerns. The human mind is unlike anything we have encountered. It is loud. It is chaotic. It is overwhelming. He paused. But I have been thinking about what I felt when I touched Ambassador Hoffman's mind. Yes, there was chaos. Yes, there were many voices, many emotions, all fighting for attention. But there was something else as well. He looked at Claire. There was choice. The chamber was completely still. Every thought in her mind was a choice, Vethran continued. Every emotion was weighed against every other emotion. Every impulse was questioned. Every desire was examined. She was not simply acting on instinct. She was constantly deciding who she wanted to be. He turned to face Core. You speak of human violence. Yes, humans have been violent. But they have also stopped their violence. They have looked at their own history and felt shame. They have built systems to prevent themselves from repeating their mistakes. How many species can say the same? Core started to respond, but Vethrin continued. The Thelian Empire has conquered 17 worlds. The Valori Collective has exterminated 3 species that threatened their territory. The Zendari themselves have used our telepathic abilities to manipulate governments and destroy enemies. His voice grew stronger. Every species in this chamber has done terrible things. But we did those things with clear minds and singular purpose. We knew exactly what we were doing, and we did not question ourselves. He looked around the chamber. Humans question everything. They doubt everything. They argue with themselves about every action they take. And yes, that makes them chaotic. But it also makes them careful. It makes them uncertain. It makes them less likely to act with the terrible certainty that has driven so many of our worst crimes. He took a deep breath. I propose that we vote to accept humanity into the Galactic Council, not despite their chaotic minds, but because of them. They may be exactly what we need. A species that reminds us to question ourselves. A species that shows us that doubt is not weakness, but wisdom. The chamber erupted into noise. Representatives were arguing, shouting, debating with each other. Claire stood in the center of it all, feeling every emotion at once. Hope and fear, pride and doubt, gratitude and worry. All the chaos that made her human. She looked at Daniel. He was smiling. I think we might actually have a chance, he said. Claire nodded. But she didn't celebrate yet. The vote had not happened. Anything could still go wrong. She had learned long ago not to trust hope alone. That was just another part of being human. The vote took 3 days. Each species had 1 representative, and each representative had 1 vote. There were over 200 members of the Galactic Council, and every single one of them wanted to be heard. The debates went on for hours at a time, pausing only for rest periods that the different species needed. Claire attended every session. She sat in a special section reserved for observers, watching as representatives argued about her species. Some called humans dangerous. Some called them fascinating. Some said they should be quarantined. Some said they should be welcomed. And through it all, Claire felt the weight of 8 billion lives on her shoulders. Every human who had ever lived. Every human who would ever be born. Their future depended on what happened in this chamber. On the morning of the 3rd day, Mox called for the final vote. We have heard all arguments, he announced. We have considered all perspectives. Now we must decide. All those in favor of admitting humanity to the Galactic Council, signal your approval. Lights began to glow across the chamber. Green lights, one after another, appearing above the seats of representatives who voted yes. Claire counted them silently. 50, 70, 90. But she also saw red lights appearing. Representatives who voted no. She counted those too. 40, 60, 80. It was going to be close. Too close. More lights appeared. Green and red, scattered across the chamber like stars in the night sky. Claire gripped Daniel's hand so tightly that he winced. Finally, after what seemed like forever, the voting stopped. A mechanical voice announced the results. 118 votes in favor. 92 votes against. Humanity is admitted to the Galactic Council. For a moment, Claire didn't believe it. She sat frozen, certain that she had heard wrong. Then Daniel threw his arms around her, and she heard cheering from somewhere, and she realized that it was real. They had won. Earth had won. She stood up on shaking legs. Tears were streaming down her face. She looked across the chamber and saw Vethran watching her. He nodded once, A small gesture of acknowledgement. Claire nodded back. Thank you, she thought. Thank you for believing in us. MoXX raised a limb for silence. Humanity is now a member of the Galactic Council. They will be granted the same rights and responsibilities as all other member species. However, given the unique nature of human consciousness, special provisions will apply. Claire's happiness dimmed slightly. What kind of provisions? No telepathic verification will be required for human representatives, Mox continued. This exception is made to protect our Sindari colleagues from harm. Instead, humans will be assessed through alternative methods to be determined by a special committee. Claire relaxed. That seemed reasonable. Additionally, Mox said, Councillor Myra Toll has proposed the creation of a new field of study, human psychology from an external perspective. This field will seek to understand the human mind through observation and conversation rather than telepathic contact. Volunteers are requested from all species interested in participating. Myrattle stood up. I believe humans have much to teach us, she said. Their minds may seem chaotic, but that chaos has driven them to extraordinary achievements. They have created art, music, literature, and philosophy that is unlike anything else in the galaxy. They have developed science and technology at a remarkable pace. They have built civilizations that value individual freedom and collective responsibility at the same time. She looked at Claire. I believe this is because of their internal complexity, not despite it. The conflict within them drives them to create, to question, to improve. They are never satisfied because they can never fully agree with themselves. And so they keep pushing forward, always seeking something better. Representative Core stood up angrily. This is foolishness. We are praising them for being mentally disordered? We are praising them for being alive, Myratil replied calmly. More alive than many of us have ever been. When was the last time you questioned your own beliefs, Representative Core? When was the last time you argued with yourself about the right thing to do? Core had no answer. He sat down slowly, his face unreadable. The session ended shortly after. Representatives began to file out of the chamber, already discussing what had happened. Claire found herself surrounded by beings of all shapes and sizes, all wanting to speak with the human who had started such a debate. She answered their questions as best she could. Yes, all humans had multiple internal voices. Yes, it was exhausting sometimes. No, they did not know any other way to think. Yes, they had learned to live with it. No, they did not want to change. Finally, the crowd thinned, and Claire found a quiet corner to catch her breath. Daniel stood guard nearby, keeping the remaining curious aliens at bay. Vethran approached slowly. He looked better than he had the last time Claire saw him. The color had returned to his gray skin, and his silver eyes were clear and steady. Congratulations, Ambassador, he said. Claire smiled. Thank you. For everything. I don't think we would have won without you. Vethran was quiet for a moment. May I ask you something? Something personal? Of course. When I touched your mind, I felt something I have never felt before. A kind of loneliness, but also a feeling of connection. As if every human is isolated inside their own head, but also aware that every other human is isolated too. And that shared isolation somehow brings you together. He tilted his head. Is that what it is like? To be human? Claire thought about it. Yes, she said finally. I think that's exactly what it's like. We're all trapped inside our own minds, listening to our own voices argue with themselves. But we know that everyone else is going through the same thing. And somehow, that makes it bearable. That makes us family. Vethran nodded slowly. I think I understand. Or at least, I am beginning to understand. He paused. Your species is very strange, Ambassador. But I believe you will do great things. Claire laughed. "We'll certainly try, and argue with ourselves about it the whole way." Later that night, Claire stood alone in her quarters, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond her sight, was Earth, her home. The planet where 8 billion humans were living their chaotic, complicated, wonderful lives. They didn't know yet that they had been accepted. They didn't know that the galaxy had decided to trust them. But soon they would. And then everything would change. Claire felt the familiar storm inside her head. Excitement about the future. Fear about what could go wrong. Pride in what she had accomplished. Doubt about whether she deserved it. Love for her home and her people. Worry about the challenges ahead. All of it, all at once, all fighting for attention. She smiled. This was what it meant to be human. This was what she had defended before the entire galaxy. Not perfection, not peace, just the endless, beautiful struggle to be better than what she was yesterday. The door chimed. Daniel entered, carrying 2 glasses of something that looked like champagne. "From one of the friendly delegates," he said, handing her a glass. "They wanted to celebrate with us." Claire took the glass. "What should we drink to?" Daniel thought about it. "To chaos?" Claire laughed. "To chaos," she agreed. "May it never stop driving us forward." They touched their glasses together and drank. Outside, the stars burned on, uncaring and eternal. And among those stars, a new species had taken its place. A species of chaos and conscience, of doubt and determination, of endless, exhausting, wonderful internal conflict. The galaxy would never be the same. And somehow, Claire thought, that was exactly as it should be.